5 spine-chilling Skinwalker encounters exposed, terrifying tales from cursed wilderness nights. Emily Rogers sat alone on the porch, haunted whispers of a life ripped apart echoing in the empty air. As a single mother, the raucous laughter of her children, Jake and Lily, used to fill their yard with warmth. Now, the absence of her husband, a gentle soul torn from them too soon, left an undeniable void. Selah, the name of their family dog, long forgotten among the dark memories. Each weekend bonfire had morphed into a pit of despair, the memory of roasted marshmallows now replaced with smoke trails that spiraled like lost hopes into the night sky. But tonight felt different, wrong. Howls cut through the silence, unnatural and terrifying. Those prickly hairs on her neck stood at attention, the moon draped in a ghastly glow over the neighborhood. Jake, always so fascinated with the lore of their surroundings, had stirred a mix of dread and disbelief in their once peaceful home with whispers of the Skinwalker, the sinister legend of a beast that haunted the nearby woods. "Mom, it's out there," Jake had insisted once, pointing toward the shadowy expanse of trees that hid secrets he believed were all too real. Emily had brushed him off, reminding him that such stories were made for children, but those shadowy limbs stretching out seemed ominously different now. Days passed in a blur of unease. The fabric of suburbia frayed with every whispered rumor. The friendly nods from neighbors became furtive glances, filled with unspoken fears. Grocery store shelves began to dwindle, as anxiety clawed its way through the once bustling streets, the air thick with paranoia. Emily felt it too, a disquiet settling into her bones. She squeezed her daughter's hand tighter every time they stepped out, hoping to shield Lily from the anxiety. Then came the fateful camping trip. "We'll be fine, Mom," Jake had laughed, packing his bag with bravado. Yet the mere idea of sending her children into the cursed wilderness filled Emily with dread. The familiar weight of loss pressed on her heart, echoes of laughter now replaced with a gnawing fear that wrapped itself around her like a vice. As night enveloped them, she sunk deeper into her worries. The phone vibrating against her leg pulled her from her thoughts. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. A frantic message from Jake shattered the calm. "Mom, we see something in the woods." Static crackled, a terrified murmur. "It's not alone." Emily's heart thundered, panic flooding her veins. Shadows shifted just outside the campfire's glow, and fear slithered around her feet. She felt paralyzed, her thoughts racing. Had she ignored the signs? In that desperate hour, she propelled herself toward the woods. The trees loomed as grim sentinels, the silence oppressive as she sprinted. A scream pierced the night, raw and haunting, the horrifying sound that took her breath. She hesitated, feeling the weight of dread pressing tighter against her chest. Maybe the threat was not confined to the woods. Could it be among the neighbors she once trusted? Clutching the hope of finding her children, Emily noticed a familiar sweater tangled on a gnarled branch, the moth-eaten fabric waving like a desperate signal. A guttural howl reverberated nearby, resonating with the childhood tales she had dismissed so frivolously. What was lurking in the dark? In that moment of realization, only one thought consumed her. Had she veiled her children behind a wall of disbelief just as treacherous as the cursed wood surrounding her? The wild noises surrounded Emily, wrapping around her like an invisible noose. Each howl clawed at her sanity. She forced her trembling legs to move, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm in her chest. Panic surged, threatening to swallow her whole, but she couldn't give in. Not now. Not when Jake and Lily needed her. The trees loomed over her, silent and watchful. Shadows stretched like fingers reaching to pull her into their dark embrace. She stumbled forward, ignoring the ache in her lungs. She had to push through. Each step felt as though the forest itself resisted her presence, whispering dark secrets in ravaged voices. "Jake! Lily!" Her voice rang out, hoarse and strained. Silence echoed back. The fear that clawed at her was cold, seeping into her bones. She thought of her children, their faces bright and full of life. The laughter that once echoed through their home now felt like a distant memory. What if they were hurt? Trapped? The notion sliced through her, sending shivers of dread coursing down her spine. She pressed on, fueled by desperation and the flickering hope that she would find them. And then, she found it a clearing, almost eerily calm as moonlight spilled like silver across the patchy ground. The campfire lay cold, extinguished, surrounded by the stillness that felt heavy in the air. Broken branches and torn leaves marked an unmistakable scuffle. Her breath caught in her throat as she crouched to the ground, scanning the perimeter. The voices came again, soft whispers, just beyond her reach. Familiar, yet twisted in a way that sent cold shivers rippling through her. "Mom? Help! Jake!" She lunged, the voice tethering her to reality. But it wasn't Jake's voice. This one felt wrong, a trick woven into the night. Panic twisted her stomach as the sounds faded, replaced by a low growl that vibrated deep within her bones. Emily's heart raced. She swallowed hard, clenching her fists as she moved around the edge of the clearing. Every shadow danced in the corners of her vision. She bit down on her fear. "Stay close, I'm coming," she called out, desperation pouring into her voice. As she continued moving, something caught her eye, a silhouette, hunched and impossibly long, shifting just beyond the tree line. The form blended with the darkness, almost too surreal. Then, it turned, a face emerging from the night. Its eyes glinted like polished stones, reflecting the moonlight, leaving her breathless with terror. It wasn't human. Suddenly, the air thickened with malice. A sharp, rancid odor swirled through the air, and Emily stumbled back, heart pounding. She clenched her jaw, forcing her pulse to steady. She couldn't show fear. Not now. "Jake! Lily! Where are you?" Her voice broke, but she couldn't let the shadow of despair consume her. Anything could be lurking behind the trees, but nothing could be worse than the anguished cries of her children. But the forest was alive, each gust of wind whispering warnings she couldn't decipher. The figure in the distance melted back into the shadows, leaving her alone again. The wild was closing in. The moonlight faded abruptly as clouds swallowed the sky. Emily's stomach lurched. The calm she had felt just moments ago evaporated into dread-laden darkness. Without warning, a chilling howl erupted close by, shaking the very roots of the forest. Emily turned, eyes darting left and right. Something sinister shifted in the darkness, circling her like a predator. She caught the slightest movement, a figure emerged, not her children, but a distorted silhouette, its gait staggered and unnatural. Was this her child? Or something else entirely? "Jake! Lily!" She screamed, frantically scanning the woods for any glimpse of them. Panic-clutched hands trembled as she felt the claws of terror closing in. As the form stepped closer, it flickered and warped in the void, its shape altering. Was it mimicking her son's voice now? A gnarled face twisted in a grotesque smile, the thing was close enough she could see the glint of sharp teeth. "Mom, help," it beckoned, the fake innocence clawing at her heart. She staggered backward, the realization breaking upon her like a wave. This wasn't her child. This was something else entirely. Had she wandered too deep into the darkness? With dread pooling in her gut, Emily turned to run, but the shadows loomed overhead, hungry and relentless. As she dashed into the woods, blood coursed through her veins like ice, but a new sound emerged, a voice in the night, chilling and low, purred from the darkness. "You cannot escape." And dread filled her heart. Was the real terror just beginning? Emily sprinted through the underbrush, twigs snapping beneath her feet like the cracking of bones. The scent of damp earth mixed with the rancid odor that lingered in the air. She could feel it behind her, pacing her, a predator fully aware of her every move. Frantic breaths echoed in her ears, drowning out the sounds of the forest. She knew she had to keep moving, had to escape the horror lurking close by. Jake! Lily! Her cries grew weaker, desperation washing over her in waves. She could hear it, a rustling sound, like claws dragging across the ground. Every instinct screamed at her to look back, but she couldn't. The fear of what she might see was more terrifying than the dark itself. In the distance, a flicker of light danced between the trees, a ghostly glow that momentarily pierced the shadows surrounding her. Hope surged in her chest. Maybe it was Jake and Lily, maybe they made it to safety. She veered toward the light, her pulse racing now with a mix of urgency and dread. As she drew closer, the faint light morphed into a flickering flame, a lantern swinging from a gnarled branch. It swayed eerily, casting elongated shadows that twisted grotesquely across the ground. Suddenly, silence gripped the forest. The haunting sounds of the night seemed to hold their breath, as if the wilderness itself was waiting. Emily stepped into the small clearing. Her heart sank. The lantern hung alone, illuminating an altar of sorts, a grotesque assemblage of animal bones and torn fabric. The sight stopped her cold. It felt like a warning, a twisted message left behind by whatever was hunting her. Panic bubbled up, pooling in her throat. "Mom, help!" a voice echoed once more, soft and entwined with the night air. "Jake?" she called, voice trembling. But the hushed tone that answered her was far too familiar, yet unbearably wrong. The voice twisted, layered with something sinister. The lantern flickered again, and from the shadows emerged the creature that had haunted her, easy and graceful like it was gliding. Its eyes glowed with a soft light, reflecting a hunger that made her skin crawl. But as it stepped into the circle of light, Emily froze. It wore her son's face, his features distorted and stretched into something grotesque. "Mom, come play," it crooned, sharp teeth gleaming. The monstrous mimicry of Jake made every muscle in Emily's body scream to run, yet she was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by fear. "No!" she shouted, shaking her head vigorously. "Get away from me!" At her refusal, those familiar features warped, morphing into a horrible grin, mocking her. Cold laughter broke from its lips. Goosebumps prickled over her skin as she turned to flee, but the shadows closed in. Branches snapped behind her, loud and deliberate. She had given the creature what it sought, her fear. Turning back toward the unsettling light, she saw shadows dance at the edge of her vision, forming grotesque shapes that taunted and jeered. With no option left, she lunged toward the path ahead, tears blurring her sight. She had to escape. She had to find her children. But the ground shifted beneath her feet as she stumbled into a web of roots and branches. She fell hard, the air knocked from her lungs. Gasping for breath, she looked back. The grotesque creature was gone, replaced by the lingering echoes of that horrible laugh. Clutching at the earth, she forced herself to rise, only to hear a new sound, low and rumbling, coming from the depths of the forest. Not a howl or a growl, but a voice, a chorus of voices, all crying out, merging into a single melancholic hum. Help us," they called, the sound echoing through the trees, wrapping around her like chains, fighting against the ensnaring dread. Emily pressed forward, her heart racing. The cries of her children haunted her every step, growing closer, yet always just out of grasp. As she raced into the darkness, she felt an unsettling feeling that she was not just being hunted, but led deeper into something far more horrific, a trap. What else waited for her in the shadows? The forest seemed to pulse, and for the first time, Emily registered her own desperation. This was more than survival. This was a fight against whatever darkness had claimed her. As she neared another clearing, the cries intensified, echoing painfully in her ears. Could she trust what this place was telling her? Stepping through the threshold, dread clutched at her heart. A figure loomed in the center, its back turned, shrouded in darkness. And suddenly she knew she was not alone. With each approach, a chilling realization crept through her. What if this was the beginning of the end? Would she find her children or lose herself forever? Emily took a tentative step closer, a shiver racing down her spine. The figure remained still, its darkness shifting like smoke against the moonlight filtering through the leaves. "Jake?" she called, voice cracking with desperation, praying it was her boy. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face she knew but didn't recognize. For a moment, she hoped for clarity, for the safety of a mother's embrace. Instead, the smile that creased the stranger's lips was unnervingly familiar yet entirely wrong. "Mom, you found me," it said, the words dripping with a mock sweetness. The voice belonged to Lily. Faint and coy, it twisted around her heart. But this wasn't her daughter. There were shadows lurking behind those innocent blue eyes. "Lily, no!" Emily screamed, stepping back, her legs shaking beneath her. Panic coursed through her veins like ice water. The figure moved, floating, gliding forward in a way that felt too practiced, too wrong. "Where did you go?" The thing that wore her daughter's face asked, tilting its head like a curious animal, the motion wrong in every way. "We've been waiting. The others are here, too." The air thickened with a suffocating sense of dread as shadows clawed at the edges of the clearing, writhing and spiraling in wicked dances. These were not mere tricks of the light, they were the anguished souls of the forest, captured and left to wail. Each cry echoed like a pulse, seeking to draw her in. "Help us," they chimed, their cries melding into a haunting cadence. Emily's heart skipped. Beneath the surface of their demented harmony, she recognized her children's voices, pleading between the tones of despair. "No, this can't be real," Emily whimpered, shaking her head. She mustered the strength to move, forcing her feet to carry her back the way she had come. But every step felt shackled. The ground itself pulled at her, as if the forest wanted to consume her, to keep her as part of its evil nest. "Don't go, Mommy," the figure Lily whispered. Its voice curled around her like smoke, seductive and cruel. "They need you, I need you, you're home." She halted, caught somewhere between terror and affection, the unmistakable warmth of maternal instinct clawing for control. But just beneath that warmth lingered a cold, sharp dread of what lay beneath the visage of her child. "I'm not your mother," she managed, mustering every ounce of defiance despite the suffocating fear. "I want to be a part of this." At her words, the figure's smile turned into a grimace, its features contorting unnaturally. "But you are," it hissed, shifting back into shadows. "Join us." Suddenly, the chorus of anguished cries intensified, swirling around Emily like a tornado, disorienting her. The forest seemed to close in, branches gripping at her arms like skeletal hands. Every agonizing whisper asked the same question: could she brave the darkness? In that moment of chaos, she spotted a flickering light shimmering at the edge of the clearing. Hope ignited in her chest. Maybe it was another lantern, another chance for escape. With renewed determination, she dashed toward it, heart hammering in her ears. But the distance never seemed to shrink, the light tauntingly just out of reach. Tendrils of shadows lashed at her ankles, weaving darkness into her desperation. The voices grew louder, drowning her resolve, fierce and unrelenting. Emily's body trembled as the figures of her children slipped further into the swarm of darkness. "Help us, stay with us," their voices mixed with the sinister whispers, a twisted lullaby luring her closer. She couldn't let it drown her. Breathless, she pressed forward, fighting through the waves of despair crashing around her. Just as she thought she'd falter, she lunged towards the light, fingers outstretched, ready to grasp salvation. Right as she felt the warmth for the briefest second, dark wings descended from the treetops, fierce and relentless. She glanced up, eyes wide with terror. Something larger was among them, looming overhead. It spread wide, engulfing the last flicker, leaving her in absolute blackness. "Mommy? Where are you?" The sound pierced through the dark, small and fragile, but not from behind. Emily stopped, breath caught in her throat, heart racing wildly. She turned slowly, dread filling her as she realized the voice was already in front of her. What had she just become a part of? In that suffocating darkness, she felt it, the vast, gnawing emptiness that whispered of more than just survival. What had begun as pursuit was turning into an unwelcome belonging. "Help us!" It was her children's chorus again, blending into a single sound that sent a chill down her spine. As shadows writhed around her, Emily stood on the precipice between saving them and losing herself. Would she surrender to the darkness, or would she find a flicker of hope in this hellish trap? Emily's breath came in short gasps, the oppressive blackness thickening around her like an ever-closing fist. Her heart thundered in her ears, drowning out the world, yet the whispers of her children rode the dark wind, creeping under her skin. They beckoned. They called. "Mommy, where are you?" Each plea weighed heavier than the last, suffocating her resolve. She fought against the urge to reach out, to respond, knowing deep down that whatever was near her was not her children. Not anymore. It was a monstrous parody, a twisted reflection of the love she felt. As she struggled against the enveloping gloom, she felt the sensation of cold fingers brushing against her skin, sliding like ice. The shadows wrapped tighter around her, an unyielding shroud. "Come play with us," one voice murmured, sweetly sinister. It slipped through the night air, winding itself around her neck like a noose. Emily shook her head, clenching her fists. "No. Leave me alone." Her voice was stronger than she felt, shaky but firm. Suddenly, the forest echoed her defiance. The shadows recoiled, writhing with rage. As if in response to her outburst, the darkness shifted, and the whispering crescendo transformed into angry howls, a cacophony of unfamiliar voices merging into a terrible chorus. "Stay with us, join the game," they chanted, a savage harmony that vibrated through the ground beneath her. Glimmers of doubt wormed their way into her mind. What if she was wrong? What if this was truly her children, trapped and pleading? They needed her. Searing pain sliced through her heart, but she clamped down hard on that thought. She couldn't let it in. Then she remembered the flickering light, the brief warmth of hope. She needed to find it again. It might lead her out or at least clear the darkness. With newfound determination surging through her veins, Emily began to move, tentatively at first, then faster as instinct kicked in. She did not allow herself to dwell on the whispers that clawed at her, trying to pull her back. Just as she began to think she might find her bearings, the air shifted, growing thick with dread. Something overhead stirred, shadowy forms blotted out any trace of faint luminescence. In that split second, terror gripped her, and she froze, hands raised instinctively as she looked skyward. From the depths of the dark, something massive descended, wings flapping furiously, stirring a maelstrom of cold wind that sent her stumbling backward. With raw shrieks that resonated in her bones, it screeched, shaking the very foundation of the forest. Was it the thing that had taken her children? Or was it the forest itself, an entity woven from the darkest nightmares? The weight of fear pressed down on her, squeezing out any thoughts of escape. "Mommy!" Another voice cried, louder and more desperate. It was not just a voice, it was a memory of laughter and warmth, igniting a flicker of hope buried deep. Resolutely, Emily pushed against the fear. "I'm coming!" she shouted, her voice reverberating through the darkness, as if challenging its hold. She turned, blind but driven, propelled toward the echoes of her children's laughter, the fleeting touches of warmth, trying to grasp the intangible. Every step felt like wading through thick liquid shadow, clawing at her limbs, intent on dragging her under. Each voice now blended into a perplexing barrage. "Join us. Find us. Help us." But even as they echoed through the night, she felt their connection to her begin to falter, like water slipping through her fingers. She wouldn't give in. With renewed vigor, she pushed on, through the tendrils of shadow, each lash seeking to ensnare her. The light flickered back in her mind, now vivid and almost tangible. Then, she saw it, an ember of hope gleaming in the distance, barely piercing through the suffocating dark. It was just a spark, but it was there. Panicking, she lunged toward it, fully aware of the agony that awaited if she faltered. The shadows swirled blindly in her wake, screeching with fury, desperate to reclaim their hold over her. And then, just as she thought she could grasp it, the darkness tightened around her once more. It roared, drowning out everything, swallowing the light whole. In the midst of her panic, she felt an icy tendril curling around her ankle. She stumbled, tripping into an abyss of shadows, but just before the dark consumed her, another voice broke through, this one undeniably distinct, painfully familiar. "Mommy, don't leave me." And then everything went silent. Emily found herself standing on the threshold of a void, a dizzying expanse of nothingness. Before her, shadows writhed and twisted, but within that chaos, she saw glimpses. Faces. Distorted and racked with despair. But also a figure, dressed in white, reaching out with open arms. Could it be? But which voice would she follow? Each choice teetered between salvation and damnation, hidden within the folds of darkness. "Choose wisely," the shadows hissed, echoing through the air with a sickening glee. The forest lay in wait, eager to see what she would sacrifice, her children or her humanity. Emily's pulse raced, her mind a tempest as both voices grew louder, intertwining like vines, squeezing the sanity from her thoughts. The warmth radiating from the figure in white tugged at her soul, but what lay behind her was a darkness poised to consume everything she knew. "Mommy!" The cry echoed, a shattering sound that smothered all reason. It drove her to the edges of her willpower, gnawing at her heart like a relentless beast. She turned toward the children, heart-clenching memories flooding in. "Stay. Don't leave." They begged, their words drenched in sorrow, saturated with pain. A mother's instinct screamed for her to run towards the sound, to push through the shadows and embrace them. The figure in white shifted, glowing faintly, a beacon against the consuming dark that saw her hesitate. "Trust me," it urged, voice soothing, echoing familiarity. Emily felt she'd heard it before, but in this twisted reality, it felt wrong. "No!" she shouted, desperation spilling into her tone. "You're not them." The words fell into the void, but the shadows began to pulse, the whispers seething as they tried to scratch their way into her mind. "Embrace the night, we are forever," they crooned in sinister harmony, growing hungrier, almost tangible as they twisted around her limbs, ready to devour her. Emily felt the breath of despair wrap around her throat, tightening with malicious glee. She concentrated on the figure. "Who are you?" "My love," it whispered, but with each syllable, the shadows writhed and the voice transformed, becoming that of her children, ridged with loss and maddening agony. "Mommy, please. Help us." The pull towards them felt magnetic, like gravity bending her will. But Emily shook her head, fury igniting at the deception. "You're lying." The darkness let out a frustrated growl, rising, swirling violently as if saying it would bury her under its weight. Shadows converged, clawing greedily at her skin, freezing every inch they touched. The cold seeped into her core, the chill igniting a bone-deep terror. She felt fingers digging into her ankle, pulling, desperate to drag her away. "Mom! We need you. Hurry!" Emily's heart fractured at the sound. "I'm coming. I won't leave you." But this time, she was determined not to be ensnared by the shadows. She pulled away from the figure in white, adrenaline surging as she fought, pushing herself past the crushing dread. The darkness surged around her, clamoring, each voice howling, desperate to reclaim their hold. But retreating wasn't an option. Emily lunged forward, kicking against the shadow tendrils, imagining her children standing safe on the shore, radiating warmth, back from the abyss. The figure dimmed, a ghostly whisper fading into despair. "You'll regret this forever," it hissed, as Emily felt the shadows claw into her skin, threatening to tear her apart as she pressed on. She burst forth, propelled by love and terror, the cries of her children echoing in her ears as the forest writhed in an anguished frenzy. "This way. We're almost there." A clearing emerged ahead, faint light beckoning from beyond. She could almost feel the warmth of her family, just out of reach. But as she sprinted forward, the ground trembled, and roots erupted from the earth, snaking around her legs, pulling her back into the suffocating night. "Stop!" Emily gasped, heart pounding in her throat. "You can't hold me." But the blackness only danced, delighted by her struggle. As shadows closed in, she screamed, "No! I will not be taken." Realizing the figure was gone, like smoke in the wind, Emily pushed forward, each frantic movement accompanied by the echo of lost laughter that morphed into screams. The darkness quivered as a massive form loomed behind her, massive wings snapping against the air, distorted yet eerily familiar. "Mommy," they whispered. Her heartbeat quickened. Was it an echo or the final call of her children, forever lost? The forest waited, holding its breath. Emily stumbled, forcing herself to look back, and she was met with the impossible. Could it be? The twisted fragments of her children surged closer, their eyes filled with a desperation that twisted her heart beneath the terror. "Mommy, we're right here." But as she reached out, everything went black again, the laughter twisting into an unholy wail. "Choose now." A voice thundered around her, distorted yet clear. "Save them from their fate or save yourself." Emily's heart shattered in that moment, shadows coiling tightly, its laughter invading her ears as she realized the sinister truth. What path would she take now? And could she wrestle herself away from the darkness claiming her soul? Emily clawed her way back into consciousness, gasping for air as shards of reality pierced through her fogged mind. The shadows hissed around her, retreating momentarily as she blinked against the blinding brightness of the clearing. She lay on the cold, damp ground, heart racing, gasping like a fish thrown onto dry land. The whispers still lingered, taunting her, an echo of despair wrapping around her like a shroud. "Save them or save yourself." It was a choice that echoed over and over, gnawing at her sanity, each instance more invasive than the last. Panic surged through her, stealing her breath. She scrambled to her feet, eyes darting around the clearing. The ethereal light felt almost unreal, illuminating twisted trees whose limbs looked like skeletal fingers clawing at the skies. "Where are you?" she shouted, her voice raw and trembling. The silence answered her, a cacophony of heartbeats and rustling leaves filling the void. Each second stretched into a lifetime, the air heavy with dread. She took a step forward, then froze as an familiar sound echoed through the silence, children's laughter. Emily's instincts ignited, desperation fanned the flames of her resolve. "I'm coming!" she cried into the darkness surrounding the fleeting light, clutching hope like a tattered flag against a storm. Suddenly, the laughter shifted, morphing into cries laced with terror. "Mommy!" It was a chilling symphony of despair, as if the very essence of anguish was laced into each call. She felt her heart clench, the warmth of maternal instinct flooding through her. "Stay where you are. I'll find you!" she screamed, forcing herself to move deeper into the abyss that threatened to swallow her whole. Yet, every step faded under the weight of the shadows. Thorns and roots slashed across her feet, wrapping around her ankles like the hands of the damned. "Emily," a voice came from behind her, smooth yet jagged, slithering into her ears. The figure appeared again, dressed in white, luminous yet shrouded in darkness. "You must surrender." "No!" she shouted, the defiance drawing deadly attention. "You're lying." The figure's face twisted, shadows swirling like a sinister storm. "You cannot separate them from the fabric of the night. Join me, and they may find peace in an instant." Emily was flooded with memories, fragments of laughter mixed with screams, faces she had fought to remember now distorted and lost, but she couldn't listen. She wouldn't get away. She hissed, forcing her defiance into a glare. The shadows hesitated, then surged forward with a hunger that rattled her bones. Emily staggered back, glancing around to find an escape, but the forest had transformed into a maze of thick blackness. "Mommy! Help!" a voice cried, clearer now, desperate and raw. Stay there. I'm coming. She shouted again, rushing to where she thought their cries originated. The silhouette of a child flickered just beyond her sight. As she pressed on, the shadows reached out, fingers turning her skin cold, whispering promises of solace. Join us, Emily, save your little ones. Each tug felt like a dagger to her heart, dragging memories of family times, of bedtime stories, of endless affection. Stop! She yelled, hands balled into fists. But her mind, blinkered by fear and primal instinct, was betraying her. I want to let you take them. Suddenly, the forest roared, the shadows coalescing into a thick wall, and she felt their frail forms squeezed against her heart, distant yet impossibly close. In that moment, clarity struck. Mommy! Help! They echoed again, fear echoing into the vastness, mixing with the nightmare encroaching on her mind. Emily would not be broken. Fueled by equal parts fury and love, she surged forward, tearing through the darkness with determination. The reality twisted around her, she was a candle against a suffocating tide. Yet ahead, a flicker of light beckoned, tangible and vibrant, the hope of reunion, but as she breached the shadows, her breath caught. The clearing stretched before her, brighter than before but shrouded in secrets. Forms danced in the light, shadows of her children caressing the edges, yet their faces were twisted in something she couldn't place, something that sent a chill coursing through her veins. With a pounding heart, she called out, "What do you want from me?" The laughter returned, chilling and hollow. Everything, and nothing. Choose. As Emily stared into the sunlit abyss, the choice loomed before her. Could she truly trust what lay waiting in the light? Or was it another cruel illusion? Her pulse raced as she took a step forward, unsure if she was embracing hope or inviting her own doom. Emily felt the warmth of the light tugging at her, its brightness clawing at the shadows wrapped around her like chains. Her heart hammered, loud and frantic, but it wasn't just fear, it was hope battling against the icy fingers of despair. The air thick with whispered promises pressed against her chest, urging her to relax, to give in. Choose. The echoes beckoned again. She strayed closer, the laughter morphing into that of children, her children. Her gaze darted around the clearing, searching for anything familiar. It felt like a fever dream, a blend of beauty and horror that twisted before her eyes. The laughter twisted. Mommy, save us. The cries were close, yet somehow distant, like a haunting melody just beyond her grasp. She closed her eyes, willing herself to breathe through the storm of chaos swirling around her mind. But the shadows encroached, slithering closer, tugging at her, their presence suffocating. Mommy, please. No. She shouted, an unfamiliar rage igniting within her. A surge of adrenaline propelled her forward, and she broke through the boundary of light. Emily stumbled into the brightness, her surroundings blurring into an ocean of color. The shadows behind her shrieked, a cacophony of frustration and wrath that frayed the edges of her sanity, and then she saw them, reflections of her children just at the periphery. Mommy! They shrieked, reaching for her, their hands clawing desperately at the air. But their faces twisted, the innocence morphing into something grotesque, obscuring their features with fear and malice. They were no longer the sweet faces she remembered, they were blank, eyes wide and dark, drawing her into a deeper abyss. What's wrong with you? Emily whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. They ignored her question and sang a twisted version of a lullaby, each note sharp and stinging. Their bodies seemed to flicker, a blurring of edges that left her grasping at nothing. Mommy, hurry. The voices pleaded. Yet there was something sinister behind their cries, a thread of manipulation that prickled the back of her neck. As Emily stumbled backward, the light around her flickered, a strobe of hope and horror. The shadows, sensing her hesitation, lunged for her with a fury that made her blood run cold. Join us, the figure from before hissed, its voice a slippery whisper that wrapped around her. Get away from me. Her defiance danced in the air, but the shadows only twisted and surged with growing anger, forming monstrous shapes ready to swallow her whole. She was trapped between the flickering light and the growing darkness closing in, claws itching for her flesh, pulling at her mind. "Mommy, save us." The song morphed again, and in that moment, Emily remembered everything: the smell of their hair, the sound of their giggles, the feel of their warm bodies against hers during stormy nights. All of it collapsed into a single sharp point, piercing her heart. "No!" she screamed, every ounce of her love flooding outward like a protective shield. "I will not abandon you." The shadows recoiled, howls erupting into a frenzy. Her resolve sparked a flash of light, illuminating the dark edges of the clearing as the figures wavered. For a split second, her kids' faces emerged in perfect clarity, pure and untainted. "Mommy," they whispered, just as the darkness surged again, thrashing against her. Emily, the figure in white, urged, its voice dripping with malice. "You must decide. Save yourself, or let them drown with you." Every heartbeat thudded loudly in her ears, each one an agonizing reminder of her choice. The clearing roared around her, an inferno of light and shadow, her children's faces mingling with the encroaching darkness, and then, just as hope began to slip through her fingers like sand, a new sound erupted, a thundering crash that echoed through the clearing, rending the air. Emily turned sharply, breath hitching. What was that? Was it a way out? But as she searched for the source, the gleam in the light darkened, and behind her, the shadows drew in closer, hungry once more, waiting. What was lurking in the depths? Behind her, ready to seize the moment? A new terror slithered through her veins, clamoring for her attention. "Emily," it called again, a voice embedded in the chaos, whispering secrets of what was yet to come. Her heart raced. Was it truly her children, or the shadows seeking to deceive her once again? Emily squinted into the dimming light, her pulse hammering against her ribcage. The air felt charged, electric with promises and threats, warring against each other. She had to pick a path before the darkness completely swallowed her whole. The thundering crash had stopped, and silence hung heavy, suffocating. All she could hear was her shaky breath, punctuated by the distant whispers of shadows clawing at her sanity. "Mommy," the voice tugged again, but now it was different, no longer purely her children's. It had twisted, contorting into a chorus of grating sounds, echoing like a nightmare on repeat, more crashing, not just one, but a series of violent impacts from behind those shadows. Something or someone was coming. Emily's limbs trembled, unwilling to be pinned down by the fear wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. "Fight them!" a new voice shouted, harsh and urgent. It drew her attention, cutting through the haze. This voice felt like a knife, sharp and defined. She turned towards it, desperation amplifying her resolve. "Who are you?" she called into the murk, hoping for a sign, a source of strength. But the shadows responded not with words, but with a torrent, howling louder now as if disturbed, irritated by her defiance. "Join us," they hissed again, those insidious voices weaving through the air. The depth of their tones was mixed with unfathomable hunger, and Emily recoiled, knowing she had walked too close to the edge of despair. "Mommy!" It came again, insistent and pleading, but she had to push through the fear. She couldn't let their yearning blind her to what was real. The darkness made it impossible to see through, yet she felt the weight of the presence behind her, gathering strength. Then came another sound, heavy footsteps, deliberate and slow. It felt wrong. Each step echoed with a pulsing rhythm, something primal that sent chills dancing down her spine. She turned, breath hitching in her throat as the shadows parted, giving way to something grotesque. A figure emerged, not entirely human. Its skin shimmered, inky blackness with a sheen that caught the dying light. Long limbs stretched toward her, fingers curling like claws, but it wore the face of her child. A melding of familiar warmth and an alien grotesqueness. The eyes, however, were black pits all light devoured within. "Mommy," the creature chirped sweetly, and bile rose in her throat. "Join us." Emily stumbled backward, the light flickering uncertainly as the shadows lunged, but she forced herself to hold firm, recoiling from the horrors in front of her. "No!" she gasped, choking back tears as she searched for the real faces behind the mask. "What have you done with them?" The creature snarled, and Emily felt a pull, not just of fear, but of a grotesque magnetism. It beckoned like the emptiness of a void, promising to embrace her deeper into oblivion. Suddenly, everything shifted again, a surge of wind that howled through the clearing, casting shadows into frenzied nightmare forms. Emily winced, heart racing, as her children's voices harmonized into a chaotic chorus, filling her ears. "Mommy, save us!" Their cries converged yet stood apart, turning into a haunting symphony that tossed her mind into turmoil. She swayed, torn between the reality of her children's laughter and the horror presented before her. And then, as if sensing her inner war, the figure lunged forward, its eerie grin spreading across the twisted visage. Emily clenched her fists, thrusting her hands outwards. The mixture of hope and despair coursed through her veins. "Stay back. I will not let you have them." But it was too late. Fear crested inside her like a tidal wave, threatening to pull under everything she held dear. Just at that moment, as shadows lunged for her, she felt a sudden burst of light split the air. In blinding flashes, she saw them, her children, standing behind the figure, faces painted with hope that rippled against the dark. "Mommy!" they wailed, and something cracked inside her. With a burst of certainty, she stepped forward, ready to plunge into the depths of the unknown to reclaim her children, but the shadows pulled her back, tethering her with icy ropes of despair and dread. Choose, and the distance closed once more, closing off every possible escape, but in the frantic cacophony, a single thought flickered, a realization that enveloped her. The crash she heard before, it wasn't just a sound. It came from somewhere greater, something beyond the shadows, pushing against the veil that separated her from the truth. Emily braced herself. Would she tumble into darkness to find her children, or was there still a way to surface from the chaos? Something lurking in the distance stirred, calling to her. Emily, the voice was intoxicating, an echo of familiarity. But which side would she answer? The light or the darkness? The world warped around her, the choice pressing heavily against her chest. What awaited her if she chose? Emily stood at the boundary between light and darkness, the echoes of her children's voices clawing for her resolve. The shadows writhed and twisted around her, eager to ensnare what little hope she had left. "Mommy!" they called out, their pleas a stark reminder of the love she had poured into their lives and the grim reality that hung over her like a noose. "Mommy!" Another cry pierced the chaos. It felt nearer, more tangible. With each agonizing second passing, her heart ached even more fiercely. A mixture of despair and determination bubbled in her chest. "I want to let you have them," she shouted, her voice shattering against the encroaching dark, echoing back like a war cry. The shadows recoiled, a ripple of uncertainty running through the mass of horror that had threatened to consume her. She stood rooted, thoughts swirling in her mind, focusing on that crackling ember of warmth. Her children were still there, hidden behind the grotesque forms that called to her. "Mommy, help!" The voices swirled, each sound morphing into one, pain lancing through her heart at the sharpness of their pleas. They needed her. She needed them as a beacon of light. She remembered their first steps, the warmth of a summer day, laughter cascading like a waterfall. She thought of how they would snuggle up to her, eyes filled with trust, as they drifted off to sleep. The weight of their love and the memory of home tightened her resolve. "I'm coming for you." Charging forward, Emily wielded memories like weapons against the darkness. "You can't take them. They're with me." She fought through the grasping tendrils, feeling their icy fingers claw at her skin, but she pressed on. Every step was fueled by love, strength pooling within her like a raging tide. The shadows snarled, erupting in a frenzy around her, but she pushed forward, deeper into the chaos, eyes locked on the flickering light that beckoned her onward. "Mommy!" The cries surged, a painful harmony that tugged at her very essence. With desperation threading through her veins, she burst into the clearing. The air shimmered, the darkness swirling and coiling as if desperately trying to reclaim her. But now, she had the light her children's love guiding her like a compass in the night. "Stay strong," she commanded, and as if responding to her call, swirling silhouettes began to take form. The darkness howled in protest, bending and warping as Emily stepped forward. "Let them go," she demanded, fury intertwining with love, pushing back against the shadows that sought to dupe her with deception. "I will not sacrifice my children." Her voice rang clear and fierce against the chaotic echoes. Suddenly, through the turmoil, familiar faces emerged. A soft, glowing image of Jake and Lily stood amidst the swirling shadows. Their features flickered, shining through the gloom as they reached for her, hopeful expressions woven with the innocence of childhood. "Mommy!" they cried, genuine and filled with longing piercing through the veil of fear that threatened to envelop her. "Emily, you must hurry!" a voice called, pushing through the chaos. A third presence, someone shielded in white, vibrant yet shadowed. "They can't escape without you." With renewed strength surging through her, Emily leaned into the light, grasping at Jake and Lily's hands. "I'm coming for you." She could feel their warmth wrapping around her, pulling against the frigid sting of despair. "Emily!" The figure in white surged forward, intertwining its arms with hers. "You can't stay in this world. This darkness knows your fears, it feeds upon them. You have to decide. Everything or nothing." The very ground trembled, vibrating with the weight of choice. Shadows weaved around them, desperate to reclaim their grip as Emily clung to her children with every ounce of her being. "I choose light," she shouted, determination resonating through her soul. "I choose love." In a brilliant flash, the darkness recoiled like a wounded beast. The shadows shrieked, howls vibrating through the air as they writhed against the brilliance that surged around Emily and her children. It felt electric, a pulse of life, igniting the space around them. The warmth enveloped them, the air crackling as they found themselves cocooned in radiance. The grotesque figures morphed back into the darkness from which they had once emerged, wailing in agony as light began to consume them. "Hold on tight," Emily urged her children, their fingers interlocking as she pulled them in closer. The warmth grew, pushing against the edges of despair and wrapping around them like a shield. Together, they burst forth, breaking through the darkness into a world illuminated by the soft glow of dawn. The air was fresh with the smell of earth, a poignant reminder of life and rebirth. Emily blinked against the sudden brilliance, pulling her children close, enveloped in an embrace of love and warmth. Relief washed over her, a floodgate opened as she sobbed with joy. "I'm here. I'm right here," she murmured, feeling their heartbeats synchronized with hers. In the distance, the sun broke the horizon, its golden rays peeling away the remnants of the night. The forest, once ominous and raging, stood silent as if the confrontation had restored its peace. And beside her, Jake and Lily stood, vibrant and alive, the echoes of their laughter mingling with the dawn. They had made it. They had fought the darkness together and emerged renewed. Emily looked at them, her heart swelling with the power of love and the knowledge that nothing could tear them apart again. "Let us go home," she whispered, leading them away from the shadows and into the embrace of a new day. And as they walked hand in hand, a final whisper lingered in the air, a reminder to always cherish the love that binds them, no matter how dark the night may seem. Embrace your own light before it goes out completely. Stand firm against darkness, hold tight to the ones you love, and never forget the warmth of home. Now, this is your moment. If you love this story, you need to subscribe now for more exclusive content. Smash that like button now and feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. I want to hear everything, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us keep this incredible community alive.